Hello and welcome to the Fresh Air Sci-Fi Show. I'm Joe.
I'm Dave.
I'm Philip.
And I'm Steve.
Now, Steen, you've been on the stream a few times before, but just in case people aren't aware of who you are, would you like to tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am the one atheist and the one Viking and 3 Vikings, 1 atheist. The other 2 are my kids, which I don't assume are atheists yet. I'm one of, I've met all of these guys on Twitter. I'm a biologist. I study evolution and I do some program management as well. Work for the Natural History Museum. So I do kinds of weird stuff and thinking.
You've also got a bit of a Lego obsession, haven't you?
Yeah. I tend to play with Lego, which makes me a kid, but that's cool.
No, Lego's awesome.
Lego's
absolutely awesome. I wish I had the time for it.
Yes.
And today we're going to be discussing the PhilPapers survey. And you've recently been had a skim of all the questions and everything yourself. So what did you make of the survey?
Well, personally, I think it's amazing because a lot of the stuff I hadn't approached, I hadn't looked at before. And just having to grapple with the concepts and I think the scariest thing is having to make decisions based on the snippets of information I get from the Stanford Encyclopedia or whatever thing else, and then chasing rabbit holes. So it's actually, for me, it's been really fun trying to figure out what the hell these things are. Not so much what they mean to me. I haven't had time to deal with that yet.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I had a quick skim the other day, and I have to admit, going through it, there are some topics that I'm just going to have no opinion on because I have absolute ignorance over them. And there are other topics that I feel fairly confident on, so I'm probably wrong. And then, yeah, there's the stuff that I need to know more about, but probably have an opinion either way. So the way we're going to do tonight, Dave is going to be sharing the screen and taking us through the paper. The survey, should I say. And just giving us a quick sort of 1-2 liners of each of the concepts it might be discussing. There are some easier questions in there, and there are some things in there that, blimey, we could get lost on and need to do a million streams to cover off.
Yeah.
Now, as you might know, Philip's obviously a philosophy enthusiast, and Dave has both a bachelor's and master's in philosophy. So, and I'm just the tool that has the tools to put us on air. So
you're a philosophy enthusiast as well, I would say.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're at the same status.
Yeah.
I'm the tool here. Excuse me. I'm the scientist. I am literally the tool.
Yeah, you do applied philosophy, don't you? Basically.
Well, yeah. Yeah, the vague conclusions I reach in my papers could be called applied philosophy.
So shall I quickly sling things into Be Right Back and you can get everything up on the screen, Dave?
Yeah, no worries.
Okie dokie.
I've already got it all set up. I just need to share the screen, so it shouldn't take too long.
Should be quick then. All right, here we go. We're back in the room. Sorry about that. I lost the streaming software. Okay, so we should be here. We should be good. So everybody should be able to see that on their screen right now. I'm actually going to swap screens so that I can see things a little bit bigger as well. There we go. So, Dave, would you like to take us through?
Okay, so the first question is a pretty simple one. Is a priori knowledge possible? Yes or no? So can we have knowledge before experience? Or sort of before we experience something?
I mean, I think that sounds reasonable, don't you?
Said yes.
Yeah.
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 I mean, if we consider instincts and other things like that, knowledge, or a concept of you have to do something because of this, which is a kind of knowledge, then yeah, then we have something without having an understanding or an experience of it.
Would things like learning about a topic count? So you haven't actually had experience of it, but say if you learn about how various chemicals interact, and you could say that you've got knowledge, but you haven't actually experienced the chemicals interacting. Does that count?
That wouldn't count, I think, as a...
No.
That's theory. That's theory, and you'd acquire that theory before you experience.
Yeah.
So that's different, I'd say.
It's more like, can we have knowledge of the world before we actually experience something? And I would say yes, because of something like mathematics.
Yeah. Like, it seems to me that there is... That's why I think that it's a rabbit hole as well, right? Because, like, the question...
Yeah.
It seems to imply the question, what is knowledge, right? And that is sort of like a big area of philosophy, what knowledge is. So... But I lean towards yes as well, because of certain definitional truths or something like that, right? I think that seems to be you seem to be able to know that before sort of empirical observations about the world.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we could have knowledge of a mountain hidden behind another one a priori. Because you would have to actually go out and experience that mountain first. But like you say, there's definitional truths that can be known.
Have you never been mountain climbing? There's always a hill after the next hill. It's like exactly. When you're climbing a mountain, you never get to the top. It's just ridiculous. There's always
I live in Wales.
That's experience based.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting, right? Because like knowledge seems to imply that most epistemologists would say that for something to be known, it has to be true, right? So it still have to be true, and then of course you have JTB, right? So justified true belief. So you have to believe it, and you have to be justified. But then you're sort of asking the question if you can sort of justify things a priori.
Doesn't that just mean that 50% of the time you have knowledge, and 50% of the time you have a belief that something is true? So this rock is hard, and then when it turns out to be hard, you have knowledge. If it turns out to be soft, well, you had a priori justification for something, not knowledge of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think knowledge, like the way you would know sort of a proposition to be true, right? Like there's discussion whether or not you have access to the truth sort of from an epistemological perspective, right? Like if I'm thinking about that, you could say that I'm never able to actually know anything because I don't get to the point where I'm able to confirm that something is true or not, right? But like for something to be known, at least it should be true, irrespective of whether or not if you're able to get there or you're able to reason that. Then of course you require still justification, right? And you still have to believe it to know it, right? But the sort of truth part of it is a bit
it gets fuzzy there.
It gets fuzzy there. But that's a whole and then you get into Gettier problems and all of that, right? So
there's some other questions about truth where we can come back to it.
Oh yeah, I think
we come back to look at whether the a priori knowledge applies depending on what we believe.
What we can, what we count as true.
Yeah, but I think mathematical truths are sort of a priori not knowable. I think so.
Or geometrical ones.
Yeah, exactly. I think we would all agree.
That's why.
On that question.
Yeah, that's it. It's why I lean towards yes. I think most knowledge is a posteriori because it just has to be posteriori.
Right.
Yeah, just because it has to be.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the tough question. Abstract objects, are they Platonism or nominalism?
I said Platonism, and I forgot what that is, so you need to...
Platonism's the forms, isn't it?
Sort of, but in more modern times, it's just the idea that abstract objects exist. They have no causal power, they have no spatio-temporal kind of existence, but they are things that actually exist. Whereas nominalism is just that we have these words for these concepts and they're instantiated only when we make the concept.
There is no real chair, it's just something that we've given a name to.
Yeah, or like the number one. A Platonist would argue that one exists as an object that can be learned about, or even if there's nobody around, one exists as an object. Whereas a nominalist would say, well, no, one is just the word we use to define a particular concept. And this is a tricky one for me.
Yeah.
This is a tricky one for me as well.
It's in some respects, it's sort of both, especially if you use the concept of numbers, because one is still one, but at the same time, one is only one because we give it language, but it's still there at the same time. It's still, so the physical representation, I would say, doesn't necessarily exist anywhere, but the concept of one does exist within the universe.
I mean, do concepts exist only if people exist? Because if that's the case, then if no people exist, then the number one doesn't exist, right? Like that would be sort of the idea, I think.
Yeah, that's the nominalist view.
I could follow that.
Yeah, but then is there still one rock if there's one rock, regardless of if there's someone there to count it?
No, then there's just rock.
There's just rock. Yeah,
there's just rock. There's atheist. Sorry, there's just rock. So there's no reason to count. I think a lot of these actually, I came down to exactly that point. I was like, well, if you don't take the social construct or the fact that we are humans living in a society and we've built these things that transcend evolution, then they just aren't. They're not necessary to some extent. I didn't like that.
No. It's not that I didn't like it. It's that I sort of feel like it could be a little bit of both. If you think about like the rules of logic, regardless of whether there's someone there to perceive it, A is A, but we also give names to things, and maybe the names for things don't necessarily exist, but the things exist themselves. So I don't know.
like I think they're supposed to be like Platonism and nominalism are supposed to be mutually exclusive, right? Like one is the rejection of the other. So
Yeah.
I don't think the answer that both is sort of makes sense. Although I get what you're trying to say, I think, Joe. Like I see what you're trying to get at.
Yeah.
So is this just about certain things? Because what rubbed me the wrong way is like, there's a chair, like there's a physical object. To me, there's a physical object regardless. There's a tree, regardless of whether there's a human seeing it or not seeing it. There just is a tree. Number one becomes slightly different or more difficult because it's a concept. So, but then I wouldn't say they're mutually exclusive because now we're talking about two different things and I'm assigning Platonism to one and
but this is about abstract objects.
So if we're just talking
abstract objects only.
Exactly, it's only talking about sort of numbers and stuff like that.
Well, then, unfortunately, I'd probably have to go with the majority, which is like 40% or something. Because
Go ahead. It didn't work.
No. It's just I think I'd agree that if it's something completely abstract that's created in the mind by people, even though a lot of people might agree that the same thing exists, that's where it exists. It doesn't exist in a physical form outside.
There's no metaphysical realm as such.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I lean towards nominalism as well.
I do,
slightly. I don't know. I like, on all of these topics that I have very little that I've looked into.
But can you find an example? Can you find an example of an abstract object where you would challenge your nominalist or nominalism view?
Like I've heard some. Like I don't know if there is anything that comes to mind right now. I don't think that there is anything in terms of abstract objects that.
So yeah,
that I can think of that they would feel off when it comes to sort of nominalism, but then like I've had concerns about certain things that I've heard from like certain arguments that I've listened to from Platonists, and that I haven't fully digested. In fact, probably 90% of it is not digested, but like it was very interesting to listen to, and so that sort of is like making me a bit.
There is some persuasive power to Platonism, simply because there's something sort of intuitive to say, in a universe with no people, the laws of logic would still apply. Yeah, and they would still be there. It's just there would be no one to kind of enunciate them or, speak about them.
Yeah.
They would all still hold true. But that doesn't make them actually exist in that universe with no people.
Yeah. I think this is where I'm getting stuck on, because I do think there are things that are there, but I agree with what you say that there has to be something or someone there to be able to perceive it at the same time, to give it more form. Like, I don't know if there are concepts like this that definitely exist in the universe. I can obviously think about numbers and go, rocks are there, and there's one rock, there's two rocks, and regardless of whether there's anyone there that in existence, that any minds, they're still there as numbers. But
no, because there's no connection between them.
But that's what I'm coming to. It's like I'm still looking at it from the perspective of my world, like, because I am there and I already have this concept there. So there is a comment on this one in the chat as well. Bible says there's plenty of animals that can count, and in my opinion, it's like logic. It exists independent of mind. It's not merely a concept, but also a property. And
that's interesting. I think, like, I can see, the attractiveness of that, right? That's why I'm sort of like, I don't know what to think of this exactly. No,
and that's why I'm going back and forth about it. I genuinely don't know where I stand on this, because there are certain things that do feel like they're properties that are there that we just, our language gives them more form, but they're there regardless. But I understand the argument of, but if there wasn't ever anyone there to give them that form, would they be there? Yeah. So I'm arguing against myself in my head, and I'm probably not saying what I've got on my mind properly either. I can't even think of the words to describe that. So I'm going to stick with I don't know at this stage. It's something
perfectly good answer.
I would need to think on a hell of a lot more to really think about.
Yeah, I lean towards nominalism. I don't know enough about the topic, though, to actually be able to say, well, nominalism is the answer.
So
because there's stuff I find convincing about Platonism as well.
Lulu says, genuinely interested if fictionalism lingers in other. Is that in there? Can you expand it?
I hope that was for Dave.
I pressed the wrong button. I was busy looking at the Discord share screen. I clicked on the other on the Discord share screen.
Okay, agnostic undecided is 8 point.
I think when you click on other, that's mostly what it shows in each option.
So, yeah. Okay.
Or if you click, are you guys looking at the fine breakdown?
So maybe then fictionalism might be accept an alternative view, one of them. So
yeah, probably.
But it doesn't give us the details. So it might be, Lulu. I'm sorry we couldn't give you a better answer than that.
There are some that reject both, so they must choose something else.
Yeah.
So that might be.
There's also like just this feeling of inadequacy when I look at these questions, and then sort of you look up the SEB page and and they're like 800 pages on this very question. Like, okay. I mean, like I think this is my intuition here, right? But that's all I have to go off of, and I haven't read all of this, and so I'm feeling a bit,
But that's the brilliant part, because you're reading it and you're like, oh, that sounds reasonable. Yeah, let's go with that. And then you read something else, you're like, no, that's okay too. So let's do that one. And then you're like, oh shit. In which scenario do I want to pick one or the other?
And then you end up going, they're both true, and you realize you're making contradictions. And you're completely irrational.
No, because then you can just be Graham.
Yes.
And go,
I'm gonna.
Fine.
You know what? I know that I'm gonna accept contradictory views here, or views that are in tension. So on the question of logic, I'm just gonna go with non-classical logic, so nobody can pin me down. Because
it's so weird. On that one, I just wish I knew more about it, because it just sounds so cool.
Yeah, it's really,
I wanna, but I just.
Favorite.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
We definitely are. So aesthetic value.
Okay, so we basically all lent towards nominalism on that one, apart from Joe, who's agnostic on it, which is perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay, is aesthetic value objective or subjective?
This is an interesting one.
I said other.
We've sort of done a stream on this, Dave, haven't we?
Kendall Walton's categories of art. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd say it can be both.
I mean, that's
yes. So
Grand Priest mode again.
No, but I completely agree, because there's aesthetic value. There are values that we perceive as calming or beautiful or not regenerative, but things that restore us or ground us, that we perceive as aesthetic and pleasing. But then at the same time, we are going to have all these experiences that are subjective, that come in and either overrule that or influence that, and we can genuinely see. I mean, we could generally see green fields and mountains, which most people would see pleasing. But if we'd had a really traumatic experience, that would be horror to us, right? That would not be aesthetic. So I honestly think that there are two things that go hand in hand there, depending on, because there's a biological thing to it. Green tables may make you more relaxed. That's why they use them in Denmark for exams, for example. And
that's fair. It's also along the lines. Sorry, Philip, you go.
No. I just wanted to say, like, there's also a question about sort of what aesthetics is, right, to some extent, because then, like, you seem like the way Steen describes it, it seems to me that sometimes, you know, it can be talked in terms of utility, right, or sort of what or gives rise to certain emotions, right? But is that what we're talking about? That's also like a different question, I think.
Yeah, Roger Scruton would argue that it's something like the study of beauty.
Yeah, so pleasure, right? It's something that creates pleasure. Or at least that's what I got from what I read. It's something that's pleasing.
I think I can picture myself looking at something that is that I would deem beautiful, but that is not pleasurable to look at.
Yeah, but there are names for people like that, Philip. Careful.
Well, I mean, that is one of the things in aesthetics is the study of art, and sometimes art is supposed to actually be offensive. Yeah, it's supposed to cause a kind of visceral reaction.
But then you're pleasing sentiment.
You're being pleased by that.
You like being jarred because it creates that sense of, I need to change my perspective. I like being open, or I like being challenged, right? I don't know how we bring it back to hard sex and stuff like that, but with art, yes.
I like the way you think, Steve. That seems very consequentialist, but I really like that. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with Steve here.
And I think, you know, it comes back to, I mean, if we focus on the beauty part, I mean, there are objective standards of beauty, and there's also a subjective preference, you know, so you could say that this is, you know, fits the standard. This is objectively beautiful to this standard, but my preference is not for this. So you can go between the objective and subjective standards there.
But the standard image of beauty is one that's created in us by society. It's not. So but then again, we do have an objective one, which is the larger breasts, which is definitely not the standard that the modeling sells us, right? So there's
evolution has programmed us essentially to go for the larger breasts and the bigger bums because they're seen as better providers, and that is one of the things that you can tie it back to as well. You can also, there are objective standards of human beauty, but there's different types of art. So there's objective standards there, and there's what we personally prefer as well. You might like all the your preferences could be in line with the objective standards, but your preferences could also not be in alignment to it. So when it says here, accept or lean towards objective or lean towards subjective, I mean, I think it can genuinely be both. It depends on if we're talking about purely preference or not.
Then I want to really press all of you on what you mean by subjective and objective, right? Because there are a few questions I would want to ask, right? Like, to me, subjective means that the sort of truth maker of a statement is mind dependent, right? I think that's like the definition I would sort of lean towards. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how I would understand it, right? But then the question is, for example, if everyone in the world and in the history of humanity agrees on something, right? Even though the truth maker of that is sort of subjective in the sense that it is mind dependent, it is dependent upon each individual's mind to say that that is true, but everyone agrees that that is true. Is that still considered subjective? Or is that sort of, like, according to me, it would still be subjective, but just sort of a shared subjective.
It would only take one man to disagree, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry? Yeah,
it would only take one man to disagree, and then that falls apart.
Yeah, but like, I would still, like, do you see this as, like, everyone agreeing on something? Do you still see that as subjective in that case? Or would you say that that is objective at that point?
depends what they're agreeing on. But yes, I would if everybody agreed that I don't know, something truly subjective, that everything was that, even though we know it's subjective. I don't think that would make it objective.
I don't think disagreement
so
makes
I
something
think,
subjective anyway, because I mean, think about the shape of the Earth. There are people that disagree on that.
no,
But it doesn't
I think that agreement can sort of can give us information about whether or not something is like it's good evidence to figure out if something is subjective or objective, right? Because if the truth maker of certain things that people agree on is external, you would expect more people to agree on this issue, right? Because more people could just sort of observe the same thing and come to conclusions that are sort of mind independent because the truth maker is external to them. So if you see a lot of agreement, I think that is good evidence to draw the conclusion that something is objective. But if you don't, like, you could still have, I guess, subjectivity about things that have an internal truth maker. That just so happens that everyone agrees with that. But then again, like, the question rises, I don't know. I think I would call that still subjective, but in that case, it seems to me that objective and subjective are like mutually exclusive, right? Because you say that, okay, the truth maker of this statement is internally determined, right, in the case of subjectivity, and not the truth maker of this statement is internally determined, which is directly not P, pretty much, right? So then you have either P or not P by sort of excluded middle. And then, then it doesn't make sense to talk about something that is both subjective and objective, because they're mutually exclusive. Like, at least these definitions.
Yeah. The way that we're answering the questions, however, it says say that you accept or lean towards. Leaning towards means that you accept that there are both, but you prefer one to the other, right? Yeah, so the answer suggests that you can hold a range between the two.
No, I think it, like, the way I would picture that is simply in terms of credence, right? You can think that that there is sort of that aesthetic value is objective. On one side of the spectrum, you could think that aesthetic value is subjective, and sort of if you lean towards subjectivity, for instance, right, it would mean that you're sort of from like 51% to 100% on the spectrum scale, let's say, right? And if you're from 0 to 49, you lean towards objectivity, right? So you could still be in, as you said, there is a gradient there, but you could place yourself in somewhere alongside that gradient if you lean towards one or the other. Like, here's the question, right? Because I don't know if all of you accept this sort of idea that I gave about subjectivity and objectivity. Like, I think if you accept the way I sort of presented subjectivity and objectivity, then saying that something is both subjective and objective doesn't make sense unless you're Graham Priest, right?
So, I would have to disagree with you then, because I'm sorry, Joe, for jumping in, because I do believe that that we are influenced by two things. We're influenced by something that is natural in us, that might be instinctive from when we used to live in forests or savannas, or the pleasing feeling of stepping in earth, or things like that. People describe the weirdest things that might be grounded in actual behavior and actual physiology. But then on top of that comes all our trauma and all our experiences that puts an overlay on that. And I think that, no, sorry, I was going to tie it back to Luke's comment, but I can't, just because I wanted to reply to it. So I'm not going to do that. I'll do that later. I definitely think it's both.
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, like, so subjective is talking about, the truth maker is your personal opinion, right? So it's okay. And when you're talking about objective, it's something that's true regardless of what your personal opinion is, right? So there are standards of art, and something could be good as that standard, regardless of what you like, but what your preference is still, like, true for you as well. So I can say that, this is a good bit of abstract art, but I don't like abstract art. But it's still good abstract art because it ticks all the boxes, or it could be good still life. It absolutely looks just like that thing, but you know what? Maybe still life doesn't interest me. It's that sort of thing. So there's almost two layers there. Now, if we're going to talk about a lot of it, I would say that there's probably a lot more preference. There's a lot more preference that goes on, and so I'd say that there are probably more things. The way most people think about things like beauty is from a preferential standard. So, but then some of that is biologically driven as well. So.
But you said that subjective would mean that the truth of it is determined by your personal preference, right? But then in that case, don't you see that this is like the same issue, right? Because it either is the case that the truth maker is entirely determined by your by your personal preference, right? Or it is not the case that is true, right? And that would sort of create a perfect dichotomy as well. So it would either be for every instance where.
But it's two different things as well, isn't
only
it?
If
it's two different
only
things.
If your personal preference overrules your biological.
There's comparing it to the standard and comparing it to yourself. So it's not like they're two different truths. It's almost like two different propositions in a way, because does it fit the standard? Does it fit in that standard? Yes, it does. Okay, so it's true that in this standard it is beautiful. But do I like it? Yes or no? So that's what I'm talking about there. That's almost two different aspects.
I think you got the standard wrong though, Joe, because I think the standard is set by other people with subjective opinions. So
do you not think something subjective can become an objective standard over time? Look at a hammer.
No, we talked about that before, and I think Luke actually mentioned something about paintings and coloring and framing. The same with music. Like if you take music, people like music because they've grown up with a specific type of music, and I'm not talking about rap or R&B. I'm talking about the scale, the music scale that they use, which is completely different between cultures. So you can listen to a different cultural type of music and go, this just doesn't fit. It's jarring to me. But that's their standard. But that doesn't mean it's objective, because I don't agree to it. It's within that framework, and that's what people grow up with. So that's what they grow up with. That's what they learn. That's still subjective, isn't it?
But the standard has become objective over time. That's sort of what it's gone
within that framework.
Sure, but there's
culture.
different objective standards. Just like there's abstract art and there's still life, and there's and when you think about movies, there's horrors, there's comedies, there's this. If you're thinking about a horror, right, it's supposed to be something that's scary, and if you're complaining about it not being particularly funny, well then you're judging it wrong, because it's a horror. It's supposed to scare you and make you think and question being human and all that sort of stuff, rather than
that's my wife and Monty Python. She's just weird. She doesn't like it.
Okay, so now let Dave correct us all. So what is the correct answer, Dave?
Sorry, my internet is being really patchy tonight for some reason.
No, we know. That's so. I really want you into conversation.
Yeah, no, it's I have. I've heard most of it, don't worry.
Okay.
Generally, what it's speaking about here is whether there are features above our opinion about art that make it worth, have aesthetic value. So, does Anna Karenina have aesthetic value even if nobody likes it in a group? I would say yes, because it's good literature. It's written well. But like Joe says, there is a certain level of subjectivity to whether or not an individual thinks it's good. So if somebody says, well, Anna Karenina, sorry, I can never pronounce that. If somebody says Anna Karenina is a terrible book, would they be wrong? if they say it's lousy literature, it's not written very well, it's rubbish because it's just terribly written, would they be wrong?
Yeah, that's the question, right? Like,
they're sort of getting things confused. They're talking about their preference rather than actually talking about it, how it is actually written.
yeah, but if it is
If something is
subjective,
written
then-
well, there's a framework of what's written well. I mean, take it down to something a bit more simple. Okay, think about the spelling. Okay, say if you're judging the spelling and you say all the spelling was wrong, but actually all the words were spelt right. There's a standard.
But that's
for
not
this
aesthetics, is it?
No, it's not. No, I'm making it a simpler thing to say.
Okay.
So with literature, there's sort of a standard of writing. It might not be interesting, but it could be still written well. Just as something could be written poorly, but you really enjoy it.
Yeah, but is the same, like, is saying that this book is beautiful, this text is beautiful, the same as saying that this text conforms to this sort of standard that they have in mind?
It's an
Is that the
aesthetic
same sort
standard,
of
though, isn't
sentence
it?
Well, that's
Yeah.
it. It's there are what are classified as standards of art within the philosophy of aesthetics. Like most people would say, well, if a child draws a picture in art class, then it's art. But that's slightly different than saying what is art. Art has these certain properties that we would expect to see. And if it doesn't meet these properties, it's kitsch rather than art.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
an interesting question.
And I mean, I understand that there are people that might say, the standard was obviously in the first place, it was an opinion, it was something subjective. But I'd say that standard becomes objective over time, like a law, right? If you think about a law. Now, I know laws are intersubjectively driven and decided on, but as a person within a particular society, you can't go, well, I don't agree with that law, so what I've done isn't actually illegal. You are held to that standard, right? Regardless of whether you like it or not. And it's the same sort of thing for standards of art, because even if it was, and it was originally decided, by people, and it was subjective to start, it's become a standard over time, and there are things that fit into that standard.
But if you want to describe objective like that, then yeah, sure, subjective can become objective. If objective is just an agreed standard or subjective opinion, then sure,
it becomes above your personal opinion. If you have a
No, but like, I don't.
well,
think
it never
does.
becomes a part. Yeah,
I think it shifts the question, right? It shifts the question
Yeah.
from the original to whether or not this conforms to this shared agreement that we have with each other, right? Like, and that of course can be an objective measure, right? As long as we agree to, the rules of this shared framework, then it's just about sort of figuring out whether or not and how closely it gets to that. But I don't know if that sort of fixes the issue.
I mean, we should. I mean, art critics within the same categories can disagree violently
Oh yeah.
on pieces of art. Now, if it were objective and it were within the same agreed framework, they shouldn't. Then they should look at it and they should measure the golden ratio and the color ratio and the framing, and they should both agree this within classical painting is beautiful.
No,
But they don't.
But I think they can do that, right? Like, I think if the question is, whether or not this ratio is present or not, right? They would probably agree. What they would disagree on is something else, right? Something that precedes that to some extent.
But that's the aesthetic, right? It's not whether
I think that's the question that is being asked here, not sort of any construct that you place on top of that. So, like, yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know, because it seems that you can disagree about these things, right? And you can present.
No. We all agree.
So there's a few comments on this one in the chat, and I'll just address them, and then Dave, you can just tell us how we're all wrong. Virillion says, what about natural beauty, like watching destruction in nature, or is it specifically human beauty? I mean, I think we sort of addressed that one as we went along. Now, the interesting thing about natural beauty, if you're just talking about a sunset or anything like that, there isn't an objective standard there. It's not like art, right? That is just something that there is no standard to. But could we say that is still objectively beautiful?
Wait a second. If you draw a sunset,
but then that becomes still life, doesn't it? That's going into that's taking it back into the realm of art.
Yeah, but that's still. I mean, if we say everybody loves a sunset, that creates a pleasing sentiment in everybody. If you can replicate that in a painting, whether it's still life or abstract, and you create that sense of beauty in everyone, then it's objective. Not subjective. It's there, regardless of whether they want to or not.
I mean, I am with you to an extent there, because I think there are certain things that we are at least more biologically driven to find beautiful. So there may not be a standard as there are standards of art, but are there things that, let's say 95% plus of people will go, yeah, that's beautiful. And maybe. Which
is why I would say both, because we do have accepted things that we understand are pleasing to most, like Fibonacci and other well-known theories in art that we know when people look at them, unless they are deluded and deranged or blind, that might be it, then they just don't find it appealing. So in that sense, one would have to say that there are some objective characters to aesthetics, but there are also subjective.
Actually, what you just say there comes on to the next comment from Kimmo that says there's distinctions of intrinsic and instrumental value that are involved too. And you could say, there's certain intrinsic properties within things that, as you're just saying there, that appeal to most people. And that is what adds the beauty. And I guess not just the instrumental value, but your preferential value as well. So yeah, and so that's why I think I'm still definitely leaning towards both. It just depends on.
I never moved from that.
Yeah.
It's only Philip that's challenging us here.
I just like, at this point I really don't I'm sorry to stand my ground here, I guess, but I don't understand what it means in your sense to be like what the words objective and subjective mean, because like if you take the definition that Joe gave before, then like unless you want to accept contradictions, any given sort of aesthetic judgment is going to be either subjective or objective. Because otherwise, I mean, you would be literally contradicting yourself. You would be saying that this judgment is both entirely determined by sort of my preferences, my internal preferences, and not entirely determined by my internal preferences. And that is a direct contradiction. So I guess I just don't have exactly clear in mind how it could be both.
I probably see them as competing values. Within any piece of art that you look at, you will have some underlying things that will give you an a priori sense of pleasure or a defined sense of pleasure, but then you have all your meanings and opinions and experiences that have an overlay on top of that, and they may override your base sense of beauty, for example.
So Luke actually has something he says. It's the difference between this painting has been designed to be more aesthetically pleasing to people using color theory and framing, and I think that girl's beautiful.
Yeah. Which is where I tried to bring it back to the fact, which I think Luke also mentions about and most music being based on the same notes, which I don't think they are. I think you've got Arabic scales. And you've got
I love
Asian
the Arabic
scales,
scale though.
And a lot of people will find those displeasing.
So yeah, he says as well, one is about using known theoretical techniques that improve aesthetic, and one is about personal taste. And I mean, that is just it. So you could say that this is where some of the intrinsic properties come in, to the fact that there are some things that are just pleasing regardless. There's also the standards that have been created. Some of it is due to the theoretical technique. Some of it is, just a general consensus that is then become a standard. And yes, then there's also your personal taste, which may differ from these things.
We have to move on because Philip's getting angry.
Yeah, I'm not getting angry. At all. I think this is a very interesting conversation, and actually something that I haven't thought about that much. Actually, probably not until yesterday, honestly.
We should have an actual stream on the topic.
Yeah, I think so.
You did, didn't you?
We did. Yeah,
we've had a few. Yeah.
We did. We have done a stream called "Can Beauty Be Objective?" I think that was the name of the stream, and there are objective standards. I mean, I know Mark right now saying in the chat, art is entirely subjective. But if you think about this, okay, if you submit a piece of abstract art as still life, that's going to be bad still life, isn't it? Because it's not still life. You've just got abstract art there. So if you can actually get it wrong, then it can't be entirely subjective. You can say your preference is entirely subjective because, well, of course it is. But there are standards within art.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry. I am going to skip over some of these other questions and comments because they're all related on this. And Dave, do you want to say anything about this one before we move on?
I'll just blast through quickly. I'd say that there's two elements to aesthetic judgments. There's a cognitive element and a non-cognitive. The non-cognitive element is just the way we feel when we perceive something, and that whether
Oh no!
Oh no! Oh no!
beautiful is entirely.
Dave, I think you should.
Oh, I've gone, haven't I?
Yeah,
I think you should repeat the last 20 seconds, maybe 10.
Did you hear me say about cognitive
and non-cognitive? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So the non-cognitive is we perceive an object and whether we find some kind of beauty just simply from perceiving that object. And the cognitive element is when we... Hello?
Yeah.
I'll just skip. I'll just go up. Yeah.
You're saying exactly what I've been saying for a long time right now in this chat. It's okay.
Yeah.
And what I have...
The cognitive element... the cognitive element. I'll just skip.
No. I think...
No, you were coming through fine there, Dave.
Yeah, I think...
Okay, yeah. The cognitive element is actually knowing and understanding art theory and that kind of thing and categories of art. And we can find something beautiful based on those categories. And we can say something like, if you're judging an animation by its scenery, you're probably judging that animation incorrectly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for the internet tonight. I don't know what's going on. Discord keeps dropping me down to 1 bar and then just leaving it there with like a 1000 ping.
Do you have the VPN active?
No, I switched it off.
Was it just not working at all earlier then?
Yeah.
I could always send you my extender so you can have it plugged in directly to the router rather than using a Wi-Fi card.
Well, both the Wi-Fi and it's fine on other sites. It's working fine. It's just not working very well with Discord.
Fair. Well, maybe we need to actually reconsider using Discord then, because it was fine for ages, but I'm sure there's other video services we could use.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so next question anyway, because we've been an hour and we've only done like 2 questions.
Yeah.
I'm out of beer. Sorry, I need to go.
Good.
Yeah. Okay, so what's the aim of philosophy, or what is most important? Truth, knowledge, understanding, wisdom, happiness, or goodness and justice?
Well, I missed that one.
Yeah, I missed that one as well.
I don't. The next one I have is analytic synthetic.
Analytic synthetic.
Yeah, me too.
Oh.
Me too. Like this looks different as well. What Dave has, it looks more interesting.
Okay.
Which is more okay, but this is a question
Okay.
sort of to rank the important, like the things,
It's only the aim of philosophy.
and which is most important. I guess they see that it could be all of these, but they just want to ask what is the most important aspect of philosophy.
Yeah. So well, the
I'd
thing
say
is,
understanding.
I was going to say
wisdom.
that
Yeah.
because understanding sort of gives you the understanding of the others.
Of all the others.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I lean towards accepting or lean towards understanding. Like that's
Yeah, because it's about understanding the world, understanding what's right, understanding concepts and conceptual analysis.
What's good? What's
but also
true?
understanding how to
is.
understand stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Meta
But
questions.
it's also the distinguisher of the pursuit of knowledge has to be there above whether that knowledge is correct or not. That comes after. You have to try to find the truth, and you'll fail doing that to some extent. So it can't just be truth and knowledge, because then you're just going to leave all the fun stuff out to some extent.
Well, if you leave out understanding, how will you actually understand when you found that truth and knowledge?
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the question accepts, right, that someone could say all of these are sort of the aim of philosophy, but they just want to see which one is the most important according to the person that is answering.
Yeah.
Well, given enough data, you can see which ones, what philosophy is broken down into. Well, not broken down into, but what it's,
I know what you mean.
Sort of, yeah. Sorry, that was completely wrong, but
We know what you meant.
But yeah, okay. So I mean, we're all on the same page with that one, really. Then, so we can move on.
We should stay on this one then.
Okay, so now another kind of interesting and difficult one. Analytic synthetic distinction. Does it actually exist? Is it useful?
Ooh, whether it's
I
useful
said yes,
or not.
but I need a bit more context, Dave.
You've corrected me a few times, Dave, where I've been talking about something from an analytic perspective, and you said, "Well, no, that's actually synthetic."
Yeah, an analytic statement is true simply by the properties of the statement itself. So if you were to say something like, atheism is the belief that God does not exist, or atheism is a lack of belief, that statement is analytic, because everything that you need to know about it is contained within that statement. But if you were to say all atheists lack belief in God, that becomes a synthetic statement, because that's a statement about how the world is.
Okay, yeah, I think I lean towards yes as well.
Yeah.
I can see it.
I don't see why there shouldn't be a distinction between those two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
It would make more. It makes it easier to communicate and to actually have discussions if we can distinguish between what people are referring to and
Yeah.
Quick comment from Lulu on the previous one. Funny how my brain quickly thought the aim of philosophy is happiness, but it rarely succeeds.
It never makes you happy. It just gives you more and more to read every day.
yeah.
And to think about an existential crisis.
Yeah.
I also
And this is one.
just before
Sorry.
as well. Leo Phileas. It's been an hour and we've only covered 2 questions. It sounds like a philosophy stream. I did have that one up on the.
I thought I was here to help on that one. Apparently not.
There is a question from Melon on the previous one. What does it mean when someone says no to this? So is that someone who thinks that basically analytic and synthetic are the same thing?
I'm not really sure, but I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really know anybody who denies the distinction.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but there are. I mean, look at it. There are like, was it 20% that said? If you just quickly scroll up again.
23%. Oh no, you're on the wrong question.
25.78% said that they accept or lean towards no.
I just
there are
know
more
smart people.
Or there are more distinctions. I mean, a lot of these, as soon as I start reading, there's like sub-distinctions and other schools of thought around these things. So maybe somebody just went, you know what, I don't believe either of these. There's something else that is a lot more superior to that you just forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I just, like, out of curiosity, opened up, the Stanford Encyclopedia page on this, and then, like, they have chapter 3, problems with the distinction, and then they're like 10 chapters on problems with the distinction. So I think there are probably reasons why people reject this distinction, but I haven't read any of them. So, yeah.
I haven't. I'm sorry. Okay, so this one is one Philip will like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Eating
animals.
Sorry.
Sorry. I mean, you don't really need me to read the question out. You can see it, can't you?
That's another one that I didn't respond to either. That wasn't in mine. Okay.
I think that you could have a contextual sort of argument here. So I think there are... if you are the sort of person that actually doesn't respond well to a vegan diet, and actually, due to your biology, whatever it is, you struggle with, say, a vegan or vegetarian diet, then I think that it's definitely permissible to eat the animal. Why should you, let yourself die?
It's entirely permissible. There are whole continents that would just die out if they can't eat the eggs from the one chicken they have. I'm sorry, I don't think there's an argument to say that people should just lay down and die if they can't get a sweet potato burger.
I do think
that's silly.
I do think we should be give animals a better quality of life, and I do think that we should have an active what's the word I'm looking for? Attempt at eating and using less animal products. But I think everything is about balance. But I'm obviously
sustainable.
Yeah, and I know that I am slightly influenced by the fact I just love a fucking burger.
Okay, TJump. I mean, that's his response. He's not vegetarian because he enjoys a burger too much.
Well, that's not the reason I'm not. I mean, I've tried doing vegan and vegetarian, and
I think the ordinary circumstances there, and Luke pointed this out.
That's what counts.
Is very important here, right? Because I think I could answer yes and yes in specific scenarios, and I could answer no and no in other scenarios, right? I think we could all have those.
But there is no ordinary circumstance.
No, but let's just agree on one. Let's just agree on a couple. No, let's just agree on a couple of ordinary circumstances.
I think
agree
we
on. Sorry,
disagree a lot here, actually, right? Yeah. I think under ordinary circumstances, I would say definitely I am at least vegetarian. Probably lean towards veganism. I mean, I guess the circumstances in which it is permissible to eat animal products expand, in my opinion. They're not as stringent as with eating meat or killing animals, because in that scenarios, I would say that only sort of scenarios of that Joe mentioned, for example, where it goes to affect your sort of physical health, and sort of if the animal is sort of killed by accident, like roadkill and stuff like that, would be permissible. And there are a lot more cases in which eating animal products is permissible. For instance, right, if you have backyard chickens and stuff like that, I don't see any issues in eating eggs from your backyard chickens, for example. But like in ordinary scenarios, I would say, like where you buy from the supermarket and stuff like that, right? Like
It's all been factory.
Yeah, let's just say that you live in the average Western life, I guess, right? So you live, you get your food from sort of either restaurants or the market discounts and stuff, right? I think.
But let's just agree that our ordinary circumstance, even though we take the same country, the same borough that we live in, our ordinary circumstance is far from the one of some of the lower classes that we live with. And that ordinary circumstance, that can change completely, because there's a kid walking home from school, and the only dinner he gets is from the chip shop, and he's not just going to order chips, because that's just not going to be enough, right? So I think we can definitely define, and I think we can define a lot of scenarios where I would completely scrap meat, because I completely understand the implications on the planet for that. But there are several instances where I would say, no, it's completely defensible, or defensible is a word, isn't it?
I think
you can justifiable. Mm-hmm. To just say, fuck the climate, I need to live, and then you have to do that, and that's not up to that individual. It's up to society to fix that and make it possible.
Yeah, I mean, even in a situation, I mean, where you're talking about ordinary circumstances, I mean, an individual's ordinary circumstance could be, different to someone else's as well. So, like I mentioned, there are some people that do not respond well to, say, a vegan diet. They struggle with the legumes. They can't eat gluten. They can't, there's so many dietary concerns that actually they're left with, well, your dinner every night will be kale and broccoli, because that's all you can actually eat. And in that instance, they're not getting a balanced diet. And I think, for them, their ordinary circumstances, I think it's very, very permissible for them to eat meat. As I said, I think we should try and eat less, especially for general circumstances. We should definitely try and eat less and move towards vegetarianism, especially, or at least being pescatarian, and reducing the amount of animal products and
more insects. Fish are worse, almost.
Fish are worse
because there are none. You can't rebuild the stock that you're depleting. You can.
I think you're looking at this from a strictly sort of environmental perspective.
That's because of who I am, but yes.
Yeah, I care about that a lot as well, right? But I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the entire sort of story here. I actually think probably that's the part of the story that I don't. That I think is least sort of impactful in my evaluation. Although I think it's still important, which is why I think it's kind of strongly suggestive that my views are going to be sort of at least sort of towards vegetarianism.
Mm-hmm.
But like I think ordinary, like I can see what the issue with ordinary circumstances would be, right? Because you could say, well, the ordinary circumstances of someone that is of lower class or something like that.
Just
right?
say poorer. I mean, doesn't have as much
but, I mean,
income.
At that point,
outgoings.
I think you can always try to make sort of come up with these types of cases, and I'm not even denying that there are quite a few probably where this would be permissible, right? But I think at that point it probably makes more sense to talk about sort of the average than sort of the ordinary. Maybe that could help in the evaluation of this question. And I think if we talk about averages or the average sort of lifestyle that you get.
I mean,
So,
if we
but yeah,
if
my
you want
the
to
Western
do, let's
parts of the
say
world.
Western Europe, where people are in a balanced economic state and don't have the dietary issues, right? I mean, I know I'm putting a lot of parameters there, but the standard of Western Europe, there's no dietary issues and people are in a balanced economic state. So they could quite easily afford a vegetarian or vegan diet, then I and the animal products, etc. Then I would definitely agree with you that leaning vegetarianism, possibly even towards veganism.
So I think probably, yeah, most of us would. I would say, given that scenario that Joe outlines, I would still say yes, that is permissible. I'd say in a reduced amount than what we do know now, and I'd say I'd still feel guilty about doing it. But I'd also feel guilty about driving a car, or a lot of other things that are detrimental. I know I'm bringing it back to environment. Sorry, Philip. That's all I have. So I think I would still say yes, but definitely not to the extent that we're doing it today.
Dave, you haven't given your answer yet.
Unless we're talking morally, Philip? Is that what you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, I think there is a big issue.
Okay, let's shut all the. I'll shut up about all the biological stuff. My answer is still yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
So morally, yeah. So morally, I believe that there is a natural, whether animals have feelings or not, there is a natural individuals eat individuals, and nature is messy. Sorry, now I'm bringing back to nature again. And it is morally defensible to eat something else that has feelings.
I don't think that, for example, like appealing to nature is very effective, right? Because I mean, you can see a lot of behaviors in nature that you would be sort of reprehensible, and it's not like you can say, "Oh well, we see this in nature so much that it kind of makes it okay if we do that, right?" Because it's sort of a natural thing to do. For instance, like
look at how many creatures rape. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly, right. So I don't find that a very sort of convincing defense that because it's sort of in a sense natural, especially if you have the choice to not do that, right? Like the question is also medical,
our minds have evolved,
of course,
haven't
if
they?
you are a carnivore, I'm sorry.
Our minds have evolved to a point where we can actually override base instincts.
Yeah, but also like if you're a carnivore, right? I wouldn't say like if humans were carnivores, right, that needed meat to survive, then of course there wouldn't be a question, right? And it would be absolutely ethical to kill other animals to eat, right? The question is if you have the choice to not to do that, right? Are you sort of obligated not to do that? And I think the answer is yes to that. I don't think actually, yeah. That would be my position. Yes, I don't think I want to sort of get into that more than necessary, probably.
But I think I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm not trying to make a sound argument for this. I'm basically just saying that I believe. I completely accept that other people don't believe it or think that I might be morally wrong, and I will completely accept that. I think that's more of an opinion. It's just I believe.
Yeah. I guess it depends on the question on how you evaluate ethics, right? But I don't think it's a matter of opinion if something is sort of morally, ethically wrong or not. And I think in this case, it's not a matter of opinion either.
And Luke, and you're right. We don't need to eat meat. Not anymore, at least.
Yeah, like to me, the question comes down to, right, like what sort of you're putting on the sides of the scale here, right? Because on one side you have sort of the pleasure that you gain from eating meat, right? And on the other side you have sort of the suffering of this creature, right? And it might not be a lot of suffering, right? But it still is gonna, and that is sort of arguable, because arguably I think there is a lot of suffering going on, especially in factory farming. I think that's sort of almost undeniable. Right, but even if it would be just sort of a little bit of suffering, right? I don't think that you could make the case that your sort of pleasure that you gain from eating that burger is going to offset suffering. And essentially, I think that could be said for a lot of cases, probably most cases. And that's why I don't think that it's sort of ethical to do that if you have the choice not to.
I can completely agree with that.
So, Dave, sorry, what's your answer on this one?
I would say that it's more moral to not eat meat. I think that's the more moral choice. But I can see circumstances where, it might be needed. But in ordinary circumstances, the moral choice is to cut out meat, or as much as possible, if that's as far as you can take it.
I mean,
I like these questions more, by the way. Some of the questions that I've been reading just made no sense. These ones make a lot of sense.
Well, these are sort of related to everyday life, aren't they? Rather than any kind of abstract concepts. Although they still
look at the next one.
Yeah. Philip will like this one because he watched the stream on it the other day.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to base my opinions on, right? That's so yeah, I'm gonna go with, I think, the answer of the expert that I've heard talking.
Yeah.
So why don't you explain what the difference is? Explain what the difference is.
Do you want to give it a go, Philip?
In fact, before you get to that, I mean, I know we understand what epistemic justification is, but just quickly explain what epistemic justification is first.
Epistemic justification is basically the reasons we have that give us good, that make our beliefs and knowledge justified.
Yeah.
Do you want to do the internalism, or do you want me to do it?
I think I can try, but I really need your help here.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
I'm very, very unsure about the distinction. So I think sort of I'm thinking of how to approach this, right? I think the externalist thesis is that you can have justification sort of that is apart from some sort of reason that you have internal to yourself, right? So you can have justification that you essentially not aware of internally, or that you cannot access, right? But it's still there because of something external. And then internalism would be sort of the rejection of that idea, right? So the opposite. So the idea that you can only have justification if you have some sort of internally accessible idea that you can provide to justify that, right? I think a helpful example that I heard on the stream the other day, right, was about I think it was it chickens or something?
The sex of chickens.
Yeah, the sex of chickens, right? Like the idea was here that someone is able to identify. Let's just draw up this hypothetical, right, where someone is able to identify the sex of chickens with their smell, right? But they're not aware that they are able to do that, right? They just have this sort of, I guess, sensation or something like that, right? It's not a reason per se, right? But they feel like they know that this chicken that they're picking up is female or male, right? And they're able sort of to distinguish between male and female chickens very effectively, right? They don't know how they do that, right? They just seem to have this ability to pick out male and female chickens, right? Without being aware, without being able to offer justification as to why, that is a female or a male chicken, right? And the idea is, do they still have justification, right? Do they still have epistemic justification in saying that, or knowledge essentially, right? Do they have that in saying that these chickens are male or female, even though they cannot effectively provide any justification as to why, they are saying that this chicken is male and this chicken is female. So
and they're accurate like 99% of the time.
Yeah, and I think they also distinguish between this sort of practical knowledge, right? That they are able to practically distinguish between these chickens. I think that would, like, nobody would deny that, right? But the question here is about the propositional knowledge, right? If they have the the knowledge of the proposition this chicken is male or this chicken is female, if they actually can say to know that, even though they are not able to offer any sort of I guess justification of this sort. And I know that this is a very complicated sort of topic because this is very surface level, right? And you have to be very careful, and this analogy is not perfect, as he himself pointed out, right? But this is all I have, so yeah, here you go.
No, you did a brilliant job. Basically, can we have external reasons to our mind that we can't justify and also claim to have knowledge about that thing? Or even have good belief about that thing?
Could we say that? I mean, at least in the first instance or two, that this is irrational because there's no actual reasoning going on. It's that, like someone can taste something and go, oh well, yeah, that's chocolate. Oh yeah, that's ketchup. Obviously, they would have had to have tasted it before.
Be practical knowledge, though.
Yeah. So, but this person obviously has some level of induction from, they've done it enough times to make them look back and go, I've done this, on 100 chickens and I got 99 of them right. And I just seem to have some innate ability to do it. I don't have to sex them manually. I as you say, I just touch them and I know I can smell it or whatever it is. So it seems like on the one hand, it's almost irrational in the first instance because they're not reasoning their way through the problem. So I don't think that they can necessarily have knowledge, but they do have knowledge that, I've got 99% accuracy on it, and I know inductive reasoning isn't perfect, but they can still say, I usually get this right, so I know I'm probably right.
But then their internal justification would be that they've done it a million times and had the same result.
Yeah, so if they hadn't done it, so if you're just saying they just have this feeling that they're right.
Well, no, if you think about the chicken example that Philip brought up, it's not that he's going, I've done this a million times and therefore I'm right. Every time I've done it, I've been right. They can't actually give a reasoning like that. They just say, well, I don't know how I do it. I just do it.
So is the question what is the question actually? Sorry, just to clarify here. So epistemic justification, internalism or externalism? Is it whether... Sorry, Philip.
No, I think the question is essentially, can you have justification that is not sort of accessible to you internally, right? Essentially, right? So the idea would be, again, with the chickens, right, that you say, oh, I feel like it or something like that. There is an external reason that is inaccessible to you as to why you're able to sort of say that, right? But you wouldn't be able to justify it in the strict sense of providing a sort of reason that you can mention, right?
Okay, because I just feel that conflicts with the answers that I see on Dave's page, because it's basically saying that most people believe that justification is a gut feeling. Isn't that what it's showing?
Not necessarily. I think most people would say that they believe that this person would still have justification that can allow them to say that they have knowledge of that. Of that fact, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I personally agree that they have. I think that they can. Like I said, if we're basing it on the previous things, but if you're talking about that they've got no reasoning going on at all, then I don't think. I'm trying to put it into something a bit more relatable. And yes, there is the comment in the chat that no chickens are male or female. I mean, imagine it's just the chicks. You're sexing the chicks before separating them. If you want to, you're not actually.
Well, that's what it's about. The chicks.
Yeah. So it's chicks rather than actual chickens. I'm sorry if that was confusing when it was said.
Because he's not allowed to say the other one. It's a live stream. Come on. We can't be talking about somebody smelling out whether it's a or it isn't a. That's just not.
Maybe one way I could put it is: can justification for knowledge be non-cognitive?
Yeah, that's a good one as well. I think.
So, are you
yes,
talking sort of
think
instinctual knowledge? Would that count? Would you say that instincts are a form of knowledge? Don't know if I would. I'd say that
if somebody grows up with horses all their life and they're able to see whether a horse has a bad knee or is sick or has a horse whisperers, that's probably what they used to call them, right? That's external. That's not, they just grew up in an environment that has given them cues that they are able to assess. They don't need to justify it internally. They can just see, okay, that just is that. So, yeah. I believe that's possible.
Lulu says, can this question be boiled down to, is intuition a sufficient justification? Would that be fair?
I suppose you could bring it down to that, yeah.
Is everything not a sufficient justification? It just depends whether they're right or wrong. I mean, there's bad
you would have to be,
good justification.
Yeah, you'd have to be right for it to be considered justification.
Okay.
For it to be knowledge, surely. Then. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. There's something that feels wrong about that to me, but I can understand certain circumstances that maybe it is sufficient. But yeah, I'm still a bit unsure. I think it's a.
This is from the personal view, right? The person making the justification. It's not from somebody else listening to it, because if somebody else just walked up and said that chicken is sick, I'd be like, okay, great. Why? Oh no, it's just sick. Okay.
I just know it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Unless we had experience of that person, we would
do it 99% of the time.
Yeah, exactly. And then we
like, that chicken
justification. I mean, J. Mike sort of brings up something that says, how would one's internal assessment have any epistemic motivation to another's contrary internal assessment? So you've got two people there, and one person feels it's male, and one person feels it's female. In that instance. So this is why I don't think it's justification to call it knowledge.
I think the answers are right. I understand it now. So if it's from an individual's point of view, I think external cues that allow you to justify something to yourself are definitely viable or okay. I don't think there's an issue with that, because how else are you going to form an opinion in a world that's mostly outside of yourself?
Yeah, I lean towards externalism, to be honest, because I think a dog can know where its food is without being able to think about the proposition or anything like that. I think that there are, if an animal goes to the same water hole every day but has no reasoning to go to that water hole or reasoning behind why that water hole is there, then I would say that animal knows the water hole is there.
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah, I think I would agree with you. I think I lean towards externalism, maybe a bit. I don't know all these questions.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a difficult one.
with an animal, it's hard to say whether they actually do have that sort of internal process. Surely they've got a memory of it. They've got, well, when I was here, these smells and all of this lead me to this place, and yeah.
Oh, I like the question about the AI.
But yeah, okay. This is one that I need more thought on.
Watch Digital Gnosis stream with Duncan Pritchard. He discusses it really well.
He's very, very good. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's one for everyone. Lone Wolf says, can intuition ever be considered sufficient justification? I would think no. And I think especially from a human perspective and to justify it to someone else, I would definitely think no too. But like your example there, Dave,
to yourself.
of like a dog being able to smell out its food, and it might not have any actual reasoning. It's going, purely on intuition or it does know where it is without having to reason its way through the problem. It just sort of knows.
I might be stepping in it right now, but if you know the times by the sun, which is external, and you look up and you go, it's midday, I must be hungry, and then you're hungry. You've justified to yourself that you might not have been hungry. You might not have the internal sensation justification that you're hungry. You're literally looking up and going, oh, it's been 4 hours based on external cues. I'm hungry. So
yeah, would you still be able to provide a justification though for that, right? Like in the sense that you could say, oh, it's been this much because the sun is in this position, so that must mean that it's like.
I think it depends on if you reason it. You could provide it, but I think in the example Steen was giving there is he hasn't provided it. He's just looked up and gone, oh, I'm hungry.
I think the question is also about the could. Like that is an important part of it, right? Because in the chicks example, you couldn't, right? That's the idea, right? That you couldn't provide.
Yeah, he lacks the knowledge that he can do that.
Yeah,
but there are people who lack the knowledge that. Well, no, there aren't. Sorry.
Well, another thing I can throw in here is, do you have to know that you know? Like, do you have to? Is there a level above simply knowing that has to be included?
Isn't that a priori knowledge? We just talked about this.
I don't think that you can.
Are we doubling back here?
Yeah, that's it.
I don't think that's
well, what I mean is, like, do you have to know the reasons why you know something in order for it to be considered knowledge?
Well, that would remove innate skill.
Like with the chick thing.
I think that's a good actually way to put it. I think.
But doesn't that remove innate skill? Like a person who is innately good at chess, for example, or some other thing. They don't know why, but they just are good at it.
That would be considered practical knowledge.
Is that if somebody is just able to, okay.
Well, so someone's never played chess, but let's make this example more extreme. Someone's never played chess before, right? They haven't played any board game before, but so they sit down and someone just literally tells them how the pieces move and what the aim of the game is, and they happen to be blindingly good at it.
You've just described the series. Netflix. What was it called? Gambit? No, it's called
Queen's Gambit.
Yeah.
But I mean, would you call that practical knowledge, Dave? Then, or would that be, as sort of like a more instinctual?
Okay.
No, I think that's a good way. Sorry, Dave. You should answer.
No. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't want to interject. I don't know why. I think that would be a good example of practical knowledge, right? Because you would know how to play the game, right? But the question is, do you also have the propositional knowledge about sort of the moves that you're making, right? So would you know that this is the best move to make, right, in this particular instance when you do that, right? That would be sort of a proposition.
So what if you looked at it and you just felt like that was the right move?
Yeah, and you're not able to offer justification for that. Do you know that that's the right move or not?
I mean, you could take I think the example of an 8-year-old kid who's just learned how to play chess, beating chess masters. If we put up then they're playing it intuitively. They know the slight rules. They're moving intuitively. They don't know why this is the best move, but they do know that they're going to win the game. Because whatever the other person's done, they know what they're going to do because it's obvious to them.
Yeah.
Is that not knowledge without knowledge?
Yeah, if they know that it is going to be the best move rather than just
feel.
I mean, they're making the move.
Yeah.
But you have to say that they're making the move based on the fact that they know that is the best move out of the other moves they had. So they know it's the best move. They can't tell you why it's the best move. But they win.
That might count. As long as you put in, they know.
I win.
Yeah, as long as...
Shut it down.
Shut it down. It's time to go. Yeah, as long as they say, I know that's the best move to make. But if they just make the move, that's just practical knowledge.
Right, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
like having the ability to do something would be sort of practical knowledge, right? The ability to do something well would be practical knowledge. But actually knowing sort of propositional facts about what's going on, that is the question that is sort of this debate is concerned itself with.
Yeah.
I like this. There's only about 27 more questions to it.
I think there's more than that.
Some of them are much easier, though.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for the atheism one.
A couple of bits from the chat. Hume's phenomenal conservatism holds that something seeming to be true provides defeasible justification for a belief.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Phenomenal conservatism is used actually also a lot by theists sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know what I think of that. I haven't looked into it much. It seems intuitively correct to me, right? Because the idea would be that absent sort of defeaters, you would have justification to believe something if it seems to you that is the case, right? So if it seems to me that X and I don't have any I don't have defeaters for X, then that provides justification for X, right? For me believing X, that would be sort of nominal conservatism.
Yeah, same.
It seems intuitively strong to me, but then there are also questions. Why does seeming provide justification? In what way does seeming provide justification? Right? What is seeming even? Right? There are a lot of things that require unpacking there. But yeah, intuitively, I think I lean towards accepting phenomenal conservatism.
So there's a comment here on justification. So Lone Wolf says justification necessarily requires agreement by more than one person, otherwise it's no argument. There doesn't need to be an argument to have justification. Justification can and is, in the first instance, an internal thing to yourself.
Yeah, Lone Wolf just doesn't have arguments with himself, and that's
So say if you held the belief gods exist, or you held the belief gods do not exist, or you were unsure whether you thought gods exist or not, as an example, because it's a common thing that comes up. Forgetting anyone else in this situation, it's your internal thought process that goes, well, this is why I think this is most likely the case. And that's basically a rational justification for holding a belief. You don't necessarily need another party there to argue.
I didn't want to be rude to Lone Wolf, by the way. That wasn't the point. But I have many arguments with myself in my head.
I do.
Sometimes I win.
I rarely do.
What do you think about compatibilist approaches? Is it even viable for some mixture?
Sorry, say that again.
What do you think about compatibilist approaches? Is it even viable for some mixture?
Isn't that a free will thing?
Exactly.
assume so, but I don't think it's
I think
necessarily. I think it's between the two.
Yeah.
So if you if you scroll back up to that question, is he saying could it be quite easily a mixture of the two? Does it have to be an either or?
In the chicken example, no. But sorry,
externalism doesn't discount that internalism is also there. Yeah. It just means that it isn't only internal.
Okay, so I must have missed that bit in what you were saying as well. So internalism negates externalism, whereas externalism is externalism and internalism. So it's not a compatible.
And internalism.
Yeah. So in that thing, so it is viable for a mixture with externalism, because if you think that it could be an either or thing, then it's externalism. Otherwise, your thing is saying that no, it's only internal.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I mean, you're having
it's internalism.
Yeah, you're doing internal justification in both examples. But in one case, example, you are using external factors that you have no control over and you don't understand to justify yourself.
Yeah. In that case, I probably agree with you then, and would say that externalism is possible. I'm still unsure if I would classify it as knowledge, but definitely an internal justification and information that you hold that is true.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at knowledge, right? You have JTB, right? Yeah. I know that someone pointed this actually in chat out that JTB has problems, and I mean, since Gettier, I mean, we can all agree that it has. So there is definitely something else at play other than sort of it being a justification, it being true, and it being held as a belief, right? But if you take sort of JTB as a core sort of approximation and not deal with sort of that extra ingredient, the only question that essentially remains, right? If we determine that something is true, then you have only to believe it and to be justified in it, right? And it seems that in the examples of the chickens, right, you believe it to be true, right? You believe that this is this is the sex of this particular sort of individual. So the only question that remains open there is the question about justification, right? And then that's why sort of the question is relevant there. Because then the question becomes, can I be justified does this provide justification if I sort of have this thing that I cannot explain, right? But it seems, or maybe that's a seeming actually. Maybe this is closely related to phenomenal conservatism in some way.
Can I just ask a question? Because now that we're talking about internal justification, are you able to just shut down that justification? If you pick up a chicken and you instinctively know, you don't know it's your smell, but you instinctively know it's a male, are you even able to shut that down and say, actually, no, I'm going to go contrary to everything that my mind tells me that I don't know why it's telling me, and say it's actually a female? Are you even able to do that?
You're able to do it,
think
but
you
I'd
could
say you'd
probably
have less.
train yourself to do it.
Yeah, and you might have less justification to do it as well, because in this instance, you'd be making yourself say the wrong thing, wouldn't you? If we're saying that but your instinct is correct,
you'd have to be.
But you can train to go against your instincts, can't you? You can train yourself to go against your instincts. You can overcome your instincts.
But it's really hard if you're wrong every time you do it.
Yes, yeah, definitely. You have to have some weird reason to want to be wrong every single time.
Like, I really don't want to sex chickens. I want to be a ballet dancer. It's just not my job, right? I don't want to be good at this.
Yes, so there's a lot of chat going on about knowledge in the chat room, and there's multiple different theories of knowledge, and you're right, there are issues with JTB. I think it's an easy to use approximation, and I can understand why it is used. I think that all the different theories of knowledge probably describe different aspects of knowledge that should probably be considered all in one thing. And we have done some streams and videos on knowledge in the past, so I figure, you know, we should try and move on to some of the other questions. This is definitely going to be probably a 10-parter.
Yeah.
I like the next one, which I don't have either, but it sounds really interesting.
Experience machine.
Yeah, I like the experience machine.
I love the fact that everybody knows it. I don't know it. Explain it, please. Please.
Okay, imagine that there's a machine that exists, and you can plug into it, and it will replicate all your experiences exactly, and focus on giving you nothing but happiness and joy and things like that. Should you plug in?
And for the sake
that's
of the
a really
question,
basic bastardized.
Okay.
Yeah.
But,
for the sake of the conversation, nothing will ever go wrong with the machine. Don't have any fears.
Yeah,
about
there's
the
no
machine going
dystopian Black Mirror episode about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
It'll always be good forever.
No, I think my answer would be no. Because your pleasure is justified. I mean, it's yeah.
You also wouldn't know that you're in the experience machine once you've gone into it. You've lost all memory of being it. So as soon as you're in the experience machine, that's the real world to you. It just happens to be good all day, every day.
Yeah.
My answer on this one is I would have definitely said yes, probably about 10 years ago or so, and going further back. There are definitely days where if you get me in the right or wrong mood, I would still say yes. But being of sound mind these days, I would say no.
And Philip, being a utilitarian, would plug in.
Yeah, this is an interesting question, right? Because I think Alistair in particular changed my mind, I think, on the... I mean, I don't know if he completely changed my mind, but he... Like, my intuition would be to say no, but then I think, if you think about it, I think a lot of the issues that I would appeal to could be sort of resolved. So I think I just end up being agnostic on this issue for now. I think it makes sense to say yes. Like, I don't know.
It's only... Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's only really incumbent... Sorry. It's only really incumbent upon the hedonist to plug into the machine.
Okay.
The hedonist alone, who thinks that the only thing of any value is pleasure, is the one that should be jumping at plugging into the machine.
Yeah, but I think, like, I am sympathetic towards that view, and thereby probably I should be sympathetic towards jumping into the experience machine. I just, I guess my sort of questions would be more towards, if there are sort of pleasures that are accessible only if you don't sort of get, like, that type of pleasures that are inaccessible if you just sort of get pleasure at infinitum, like, or simply pleasure, right? Like sort of a drug would give you or something, right? Maybe there are sort of pleasure that are only derivable through maybe experiencing something that is not pleasurable for a while.
Yeah, so getting
out of that, right? Yeah. But this argument would only work if this is actually the case, right? That there are these types of pleasures that are sort of more valuable and inaccessible from this just sort of stream of pleasure. And if B, you couldn't get the same types of things if they truly are the things that would give you more pleasure in the experience machine, right? Because probably if the experience machine is going to give you maximum pleasure, and the things that you would give you maximum pleasure would be these types of experiencing, then you would get these types of experiences in the experience machine as well. And so you should still plug in, right? So I think there are a lot of good reasons to say yes as well. Responsibility, like Joe says, towards someone else, like family members, something like that, maybe that changes things. I think that does intuitively, but yeah, I'd have to think more about that. Sorry.
I think if no, it's fine. I was going to leave all the family behind as part of the argument. That wasn't going to be, because that would definitely make me say no.
Yeah.
If other people are dependent on me, then yes, I would not enter the machine. But if we abstract from that, I think the premise would have to be that all pleasures are the best and continue to be the best. Because as soon as you have some pleasures that are better than the other, you end up in the same position you were before, chasing something that was better than the other, and the not so good pleasures or still pleasures become bad ones because you're not getting the same kick out of them. So you end up in exactly the same state, just a higher state. So if the machine can promise me that it's going to be a consistent high state, and there's no families, nobody's going to care anyway, then yeah, why not? Why not just plug in? But it's that depends how the machine's wired to some extent.
Yeah, I wouldn't plug in.
Fair. So,
simply because there's more than just pleasure that I value.
Yeah, that's fair.
Do you though, Dave?
Do you though?
Do you really value more than just pleasure? Really?
We're back to the other kind of pleasure, Philip.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah.
All right.
That actually was.
But it's like, imagine if you wanted to write the greatest book in the world. If you plugged into the experience machine, you would write the greatest book in the world. But
Yes.
Would that be the same as writing the greatest book in the world?
It would to you in the machine.
I think it would.
It'd be no different, would it?
It would be to you
but
in the
external
machine.
to the machine.
You haven't
Yeah,
done
there
it.
is no
external to the machine. You might
There
not
is-
be able to write the greatest book in the world, and that's what I would value is something
but there
like
is
that.
no external to the machine. Once you enter once
Once you
you
enter
enter
it, yeah.
the machine,
Yeah, but
there is no external.
it wouldn't be.
It's
It
the
wouldn't
knowledge.
be you writing
Yeah.
the best book in the world. Yeah.
And I understand that. That's why I said, there are. I think
But you
for me,
forget that, right?
family, you do forget it once you're in. But before you go in, you still have this thought. And Dave is saying that he values the ability, more than just feeling good about writing it. So the ability to do it, to learn and to practice and to actually finally write the greatest book in the world is more important to him. It's that achievement. And doing it in reality that he values above, going in there and just being able to do it.
Maybe I just have
The
a really
actual-
sorry
yeah.
life. I wanna experience things that I probably don't believe I would ever experience. Like that would be
Yeah, I mean,
would
there's
be
that
something
too.
that would be interesting to me, right? I don't even know what those things are. I think the machine would have to show me that.
Yes. Yeah. And it possibly could. You'd be stuck in tentacle porn forever.
Yeah. Long live long-limbed 10-footed people or whatever. Jesus.
Okay, so another interesting question.
Yeah.
The external world, idealism, skepticism, or non-skeptical realism?
I said non-skeptical, and I think I was
overwhelmingly popular choice.
I know.
Yeah.
And I did actually go through them, and I ended up a non-skeptical, and I think it's just because of what I do and who I am. It's just the empiricism and science that I work with, and that's just the way that it fits with me, and I don't want to challenge that. Sounds scary to challenge.
Sort of a pragmatist approach.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go through the individual choices here.
Yeah.
I don't know what maybe you should explain them, Dave, because I think that you're probably best equipped to do that.
Idealism is the idea that everything out there is mental. I suppose that's the best way I can put it. All the physical things are created by mental activity. So there is no real out there in the sense that we would normally consider out there in a material manner. Yeah. It's all just mental constructs.
Yeah, but there is also like a distinction between subjective and objective idealists, right? Because like there are
And
objective idealists that think that like there is an external world. It's still sort of mental stuff, but it is sort of independent of your, I guess, sort of mental stuff.
of us.
So yeah, exactly. So if you're a subjective idealist, then there is no sort of objective sort of external world, I guess.
Solipsism is wrong, people. It's different than solipsism, but it can kind of be reduced to something similar.
Yeah, it is very similar, especially subjective idealism seems to be similar. Okay, so skepticism would be just to be skeptical that there is something out there actually, right? So that there is no external world, that there is nothing that is sort of independent of you, I guess. Is that the actual view?
Could that also tie into brain in a vat?
Yeah, it's sort of brain in a vat, or say evil demon. That's another form of skepticism about the external world.
Mm-hmm.
We all could be brains in vats. Therefore, we're not in the real world, because the real world is the brain in the vat.
Okay, but like, is this like what I'm asking is this sort of a skepticism towards if the world as it presents itself is the way it is, or is it sort of skepticism of whether or not there is actually something that is independent of you? Because I think there's like it's slightly different.
Usually, it's
there's another
used in
question
terms of skeptical about a world outside of skeptical.
That's what I thought.
That what's there is real.
There's another question about that, isn't there? About whether everything is perceived through your interpretation or your perception, or whether it's just you're perceiving the real thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I can lean towards that. I can see people in that experiencing real life, without having to have anything else, just the sensory input that they need. But then I just see us as walking vats that are doing exactly the same. We're just in the world. Our brain is just there.
Yeah. And of course, non-skeptical realism is kind of obvious what it means.
Yeah, because like this is the question, right? Because if non-skeptical realism just... I think that within this category would be people that think that maybe like the external world exists, but it's not as it appears to us, right? Like people that would essentially think that reality is sort of maybe even numerical or something like that. Yeah, like some physicists think that because if you describe reality just in terms of relations, right, then it's just sort of a matter would be just exhaustively described by sort of I guess this numerical relations in some way. So that would be sort of the ultimate sense in which reality is. But that would still be non-skeptical realism, right? Like that's what I'm asking. That still counts as non-skeptical realism, because although you think that it's not what it seems, it's still real, right? It still exists out there.
It's still there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then I think.
Think of something like Kant's phenomenal and noumenal distinction.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of. We don't see the world as it actually is, and there is something out there that that we're sort of perceiving, but it's still there.
Yeah, but as long as there is something out there, you'd be sort of a non-skeptical realist, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can see that. So yeah, I would agree. I would agree then with a non-skeptical. I would lean towards that. Although I also tend to be. But this sort of gets to the philosophy of mind question, right? Already.
Yeah, because you've heard a lot of tweets lately about
philosophy of mind. Yeah, I'm agnostic on philosophy of mind. So yeah, I just pulled myself out of the thing, right? But I think that I don't dislike idealism. Let's just say that I don't dislike idealism. Let's leave it here, right? I don't think that I don't lean towards that, but I don't dislike idealism. as a philosophy of mind position.
Mm-hmm.
Idealism makes sense in a sort of epistemic sense. Like, all we can know about the external world is what our minds and our consciousness tells us is out there.
Yeah,
and everything that we know is made up of mental stuff because it's us perceiving it and gaining knowledge through our mental activities.
I think from an epistemic perspective, then it definitely does, right? Then the question is if it is also an ontological point or not, and that's
that's it.
So there's a comment from J. Mike says, for me, I think skepticism in this context just concedes that it's a possibility and no logical entailment, which he actually corrected to contradiction. And no logical contradiction. There's just as good reason to think it is as opposed to it isn't. Which I think sounds fair, really. It's that.
That's I don't know if I would agree that there's just as many reasons to think that there is an external world than to think that there isn't one. But like,
I just go with the pragmatic.
Yeah, but I think I could understand how someone could sort of press me on that and make me uncomfortable if I were to actually justify, why I think that there is an asymmetry, because a lot of the things it's very hard to do without question begging, right? So I can see how someone might press me on this.
I suppose it's one of those things that's always going to be actually quite hard to prove, especially things like the brain in the vat, because I think there's good justification to not believe it, in the sense that a lot of people have a problem with the experience machine because they don't believe that the technology will last forever. And in this, that's not part of the thing. You're supposed to suppose that the technology will last forever. That's not going to be a problem for the experience machine. But if you think about the brain in the vat argument, I really struggle to accept that the entire universe is running and it's a machine that never has any problems, and we're all these brains in vats linked together in some way, shape or form, or it's just one brain and everyone else is fake and it's just my mind. Whichever way you want to take on it, I struggle to think that there is that sort of technology and there are no bugs.
But you've got a misconception of time there.
This is true.
What you're used to is you're used to a machine failing within 5 years of you using it. Let's say a machine that's designed to operate at 4 million years. Why is there a reason it should fail within the first 300,000 years? It might just be a new machine. It shouldn't fail within the first 300,000 years. That's how long we've been here. It'll start failing at 2 million years, maybe. So you might only start seeing the problems further down the line, right?
Well, there's also an argument that you could say that actually it was only created 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was boots up, and we were given the memories of everything happened in the past. So
exactly.
tie Russell's world into it. Yeah, I mean, but these. I don't think that they're necessarily as. I guess going back to Dave's point about being pragmatic about it, this is the world that we've got. So at the end of the day, we may as well accept it. We could be wrong, but I think we're more justified in thinking non-skeptical realism.
Yeah. I wouldn't go looking for the actual glass, the glass jar, if I discovered that my brain was just in a jar. I'd happily just live on. I mean. I wouldn't actually go trying to find the window and try to, well, probably I would try to see what was outside the jar, but it wouldn't be anything that we're not doing now with all the discussions about God and other things that we have. It's the same thing. We're trying to figure out what's beyond that unknowable boundary that we have. Exactly the same we're doing, I think.
Anyway, sorry.
That's all right. Next question.
Yes.
Do we push me off the bridge to say 5 on the track for life.
Oh, if it's you, then of course. I mean, no.
So yeah, I had what was it? Yes to the pulling the lever, but no to pushing someone off the bridge.
Yeah, that's the typical intuitive thing, right? To do. Even though they're supposed to be the same, right? Like that's why they made these.
No, you're touching a big guy that can stop a tram. Ew. We're meant to be like 2 meters apart.
Yeah, but then again, I mean, if someone is actually big enough to stop a tram, right? Are they particularly healthy? Do they have much time left? But then is that good enough justification to actually do
Am I large enough to make a difference?
Yeah.
I mean, am I just going to look like an asshole trying to push this guy off the bridge? Sorry,
we should suppose that you could guarantee somehow that
ruining a perfectly good.
Yeah.
I think we lost Dave, by the way.
No.
Oh yeah, it does look that way.
Yeah.
Oh, I think this one is tough. I think because you're
I think my answer would be no, honestly.
Yeah, I think because you're having to physically push them.
Yeah. Feels like it's a lot more of a premeditated decision to actively or engage in a physical activity that causes a death, even though pushing the lever is exactly the same.
I feel like the answer should be yes. I do feel like the answer should be yes, but I think I would answer no.
I can tell you I wouldn't do it. I'm pretty sure that given a life scenario, I wouldn't do it, but I might pull the lever.
I would definitely pull the lever in the trolley problem. I would definitely pull the lever. Unless there was additional context that I knew of, but assuming that I have no context other than 5 and 1, I would definitely pull the lever.
It's because you've thought about it more than I have, because I would probably still be thinking about it. And the trainer would be like, oh shit. Should have pulled the lever.
But yeah.
I mean, I think in terms of practical, like you could answer that you would push the fat man off the bridge and still not do it in real life, because in real life you don't have perfect information, and that there might be a very good reason.
I think in real life I wouldn't do it, but I think you should.
Yeah. I mean, even in real life, I don't think in real life you should do that. I think it's a terrible idea. Right? Even if you accept that you should push the fat man off the bridge, I don't think that you should, sort of transfer that to real life, because I don't think that sort of the physics just seem wonky to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. It doesn't seem as certain as pulling the lever.
Yeah,
the lever, you pull it and you know what's going to happen. The guy you push, you might miss.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think in the hypothetical though, it will save though. It will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you can push it and all of that. And
can I ask a question? Why is it 5 people?
But even in the hypothetical, I don't know if I would push it.
It isn't for every
because 5
moral
people
problem,
felt like a number that has been calculated. Had it been 1, no. Had it been 2, no.
I think it's
3,
just
probably.
It's probably just the minimum that is a number where people start to think, oh my god, that's considerable.
Yeah, but that's what I was asking. Yeah, so it's probably a number that's been measured through answers, and 5 is probably one of the numbers where people would actually do it.
I think a lot of people would react that way, but I don't know if that's sort of based on good reasoning when they have this intuition. I don't think it makes much of a difference. I mean,
if you say 1 or 2, Philip, 1 or 2, yeah, I'd have doubts.
I would definitely pull the lever. I think that on 1-on-1 with the sort of trolley,
you'd still pull the lever.
No, I mean, it would be.
You just want someone to die.
You want to be the cause of one person's death.
I think you could make the case that psychologically pulling the lever would have a greater impact. So for that minimum reason, you wouldn't pull the lever in a one-on-one experiment. But in anything above that, I think if it's 1 to 2, then you should pull the lever.
I think you should too. I agree with you there. Unless you know how bad the psychological impact is, and maybe there is something where saving two people and killing one, it actually does more damage to you, and actually, you think that damage that it does to you and affects you throughout your life, then maybe in a 1 to 2 calculation that the guilt would be too much, but maybe in a 1 to 5 calculation, that is like the point when you're like, well, no, it's all the bullshit that you might come up with to try and swing yourself the other way suddenly is like, well, no, this is 5 people we're talking about here. If I'm depressed about this, if it sends me off the rails, I've still saved 5 people.
Yeah, because I mean, there are lots of. Oh God,
I know, we lost Dave. Dave's not here.
That's it.
Yeah,
somebody pulled the lever on Dave.
I think it's very hard. Like, the reason why the trolley problem is tricky is because there are a lot of things that are sort of that people think of when they think of the trolley problem that are like sort of intuitive and make sense if they imagine themselves being in that scenario, but that you should isolate from the thought experiment. And I think the more of these features you pull away, the harder it is to imagine being in that situation, right? Because someone might say, oh, if I see someone on the tracks, right, I would run towards him and try to pull him off the tracks the first thing, right? I don't care if there's a lever and making the calculation, right? And that seems intuitive to me. That would be the first thing that you would do probably. But that's why sort of you have to try to think of these scenarios in an abstract sense and pull these options off the table. So you cannot do that for some reason, right? Or that's to remove it as a sort of matter of calculation, I think. And a lot of this goes into the sort of fat man experiment. Well, as we said, you have to guarantee that this would actually save the people and stuff like that. So it's.
But that must be part of the. If anybody uses this example as an assessment or as a degree of assessment of character, how much you try to justify the variables around it, or how little you do, or how much you accept the premise of the problem, those must be part of what people use to basically determine what kind of person you are, or not you are, but how you operate.
I think I agree, right? Like, I think you could. It's very interesting to leave one of these sort of considerations in while removing all of the other ones to isolate it and actually see, how much difference that single property makes, right? As Joe said, for example, let's see that it would have consequences on my psychology, right? How much is that worth to me with regards to, saving this many other lives, right? Is it worth more than a single life? Is it worth more than 2 lives and stuff like that? And you start making these types of observations, right?
Yeah.
Switch it around, right? Like how certain do you have to be about it?
People will also start asking about the 5 people, about the 1 person and the 5 people. Are they old people? Is the 1 person just married? Like, they'll start because they want to make an informed decision because it's just too hard for them.
Yeah,
they want more justification for pulling that lever and taking that responsibility.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it's a great question. It's a great party starter.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, but I think the core of the problem would be just figuring out if. I guess that's what the problem is trying to get at, right? If you doing the action makes it somehow worse, if that itself, right? If you doing the action itself is relevant in the evaluation of this scenario, that's sort of the core of the thing, and that's why I think a lot of these other considerations, while interesting and definitely worth exploring, do get in the way sometimes, because then you start thinking about these other things, right? But not the core of the issue. I think, that's sort of what I think is the interesting, at least an interesting question when it comes to the trolley problem.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Next.
So, Dave, do you want to answer? Oh,
I wouldn't push the fat man off the bridge. Hello?
Yeah,
Am I there?
No. Yeah, you are. Yeah, things just went weird for a second. That's all.
Would anybody jump?
Yeah, sorry.
In a hypothetical, if they are a fat man, would they jump?
Could they jump? It-
You can also just step off the bridge, Dave. You don't have to jump. No, but we have stories about people leaping on grenades to save their squadron, for example.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the person.
You mean the people that you'd save?
No. I think we can't necessarily answer. I think there would be some.
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, but that's not the question, right? Like, of course, some would and some wouldn't, right? But like, the question is if there is any incentive, any moral, I guess, obligation to do that.
Would you rather?
Yeah.
Sorry, Philip.
No. I think that was good. I didn't want to say anything. I was just sort of commenting, I guess.
I think we all basically answered the same on this one, and that we at the very least lean towards not pushing.
Because we're not pushing people.
This is a big one.
Oh,
which one?
Yeah,
free will. Crap.
Free will.
Is it though? I thought we'd all agree on that one.
Yeah, but it is still big. I think we all agree, but it's still big.
Okay.
I lean towards compatibilism.
Yeah, I do.
I'm trying to find mine because I think I wrote something. I wrote little notes next to them, and I'm just trying to find out what I wrote. I can't find it. Damn it.
Yeah, I mean,
I definitely said compatibilism. Yeah, I did. Yeah.
We've done streams on this. I mean, it was a massive stream that was inspired by a massive conversation at one of our free-for-alls, and I've done a couple of different articles, and my thoughts do change on it, and from time to time, and I think, sometimes I get a little bit more restrictive. I think things, there's even less. Free will, but I would say that I
is determinism part of compatibilism? Just to make that clear.
Yeah, it's
because I quite like determinism, and I probably like it more than.
Yeah, it is like compatibilism is the idea that like, free will in some sense is compatible with determinism, right? So it's still deterministic, but you're sort of redefining free will to fit a deterministic picture.
Yeah, it's not the same as libertarian free will. It's basically that there is only one choice you would make, but you consciously make that choice yourself. It's you making the choice rather than simply just it being a completely unconscious process. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's putting it in really short, bastardized terms, but yeah.
I really like. So there was I'm not as good with references and names as anybody else on this, everybody else on this chat. But the
oh no, we've lost Dave again.
The idea, we did. But the idea that determinism is at a level that to us is free will. I mean, you don't have to go down to the fact that neurons are firing in a specific order to make that choice, and therefore it's not free will. It doesn't really matter. To us, it's free will. Whether it's determined or not, we see it as free will, and it's enough for us at the level at which we exist. I think it was Sam Harris. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I don't think that free will exists in the traditional sense.
I agree.
So I don't think that free will. Yeah, but I think maybe the way I would see compatibilism is simply as if whatever choice you make is up to your will alone, right? Up to your desires, essentially, right? That would sort of count as this redefined, I guess, free will. Even though I don't even know if I would call it free will to be. But what you like, your desires would still be sort of entirely determined. So it still wouldn't be free in the libertarian sense. It wouldn't be like you could argue. You could push me towards no free will if you really wanted to. If it comes down to this, right? But I think that your organism is capable of deterministically sort of accepting information about how the world outside is, right? That sort of informs the decisions you make, so that your decisions that you make that impact the world are able sort of to influence other systems deterministically, right? It would still be completely predictable, but it would be, So go ahead.
So it was just questions. I think that was directed at what I said, which is just enough for what, which is when I was talking about levels of. I was saying that determinism was fine at the level that we exist, and I think he said enough for what. And I think I had an example, and you guys can tell me whether it's shite or not. And I think the example was, we play Yahtzee or any other dice game on the premise that we believe that the dice are random and it's equal for all. We all understand that dice aren't random, because randomness doesn't really exist at that level. But we agree it is, and we're fine. We play board games with dice, with rigged dice for that matter, without knowing it, and we agree that that's fine, it's okay. And I think to some extent that at the level that we exist, the free will or the will that we have is enough for us to not question whether it's a problem, unless we're a philosopher.
No, I think I agree with that. But I wanted to, I guess, what I wanted to focus on for a moment is the question that Just Questions was posting in chat, which was, what is at stake in the free will debate? What do you lose by saying there is no free will instead of being a compatibilist? Question, because to me it really doesn't do that much. As I said, I think I would be willing to switch back to the other one. I think the only thing that I can think of, I guess, that makes a difference to me when I talk about it is that whatever sort of we decide, right, whatever actions we decide to partake in, maybe even the best way to think about this would be sort of at the level of policy, I guess, right? Whatever policy we decide to enact or bring about, right, that affects society, right? This has an impact on how people behave, right? And that cannot be said, for example, for natural disaster like an avalanche. For example, if there is a storm or a tsunami, right, no matter how you are going to sort of bring about certain policies or whatever you are going to decide as a society, it's not going to change any of that, right? The tsunami is still going to come and destroy the houses and whatever, right? But if you bring about a policy that is sort of, I don't know, maybe says that if you do something bad, you'll go to prison, right? This is going to have a meaningful impact at the level that all of these organisms, which are deterministically driven, right, are going to behave differently because you enacted this sort of policy, which is sort of the distinguishing factor between a tsunami, I guess, and sort of humans, right? Because humans are able to sort of make decisions based on the environmental sort of what they know about the environment, right? So I still think that there is a distinction between these two events in this sense, although I still would say that at some level there is no difference. It's just that to us, you're not able to deter behavior. Let's just say to a tsunami, you cannot deter a tsunami from occurring or a sort of natural catastrophe from occurring, but you can deter people from doing things or encourage them to do other things. So that is sort of why I would say I'm closer to, like, that's why I would like the compatibilist label, though again, I don't like, if someone comes to me and says I think there is no free will, I would say yeah, I agree, honestly, like, because again, for what the term usually refers to, free will, I think I would agree that there is no free will. So if I hope that this answers the question, what do you lose by saying that there is no free will? I don't think that you lose anything, but I think there is like this distinction that still matters, and that's sort of what I think I'm trying to capture with compatibilism, I guess.
I think there's an important personal distinction that matters, which is about whether you feel trapped or whether you feel that you don't own your own life. I have no issue with that, to be honest. But I do think that society in general operates on the premise that we don't have free will. The whole society is built on making decisions for us. based on preemptive cues or things that will make us make decisions. And that's not, if we could make any decision we wanted, you can't control us. There's no way of controlling a person who can make a libertarian, that has libertarian free will. Is there? I would think
Yeah,
not. But
I guess that
Yeah.
depends on how you would view the sort of actions in a libertarian sense. I think that's very hard to think about because I don't know how free will even makes sense as a concept because of these types of considerations, right? Because like what is there in between there? Because you could say like that you couldn't really point to an explanation to any action, right? Because to point to an explanation, at least in my view, and I like this, I guess I like this view on explanations, is to point to something that entails what is being explained, right? But you couldn't do that with free will. You couldn't explain anything with that because you couldn't point to anything that entails me doing this action rather than another action, right? If
no,
you just
but
say, if you just say, right, I did this because I had the free will to do this, right? That because you had the free will to do this doesn't explain anything, because the mere saying because I had the free will to do this could lead me to do anything, right? Any of the outcomes, right? So it doesn't explain that in any meaningful sense, because for the same explanations, you could get any number of different actions.
I agree.
Right? So how do you discriminate between these? That's the question. And I think that's sort of why also I see free will as a very, like, I don't understand how it conceptually makes sense to think about free will, because I have these sort of other commitments, I guess, about.
For me, sorry, go, Joe.
I was just going to say, I think I'd agree with you there, Philip, in the sense of if someone only regards libertarian free will or one of the modifications to libertarian free will as free will, and the other, like compatibilism, they would say, well, that's not free will. I mean, I'd agree with you because it's not free will in that libertarian free will sense, but I think the important thing is that the moral responsibility, the fact that we are conscious beings and not just natural processes like natural disasters and things like that, and that we do reflect on our knowledge and our experience and make decisions, even if the calculation is because of all of our knowledge and experience, we would make this one choice. We are still actively making that choice ourselves. So that's why I think, if you're thinking about it in a purely deterministic sense, then there isn't really... It is just... I suppose I agree with what you're saying as well. You could say there's no real difference. But I think when you're thinking about hard determinism, you're almost saying that there is no intent. There are no choices being made. It's just different configurations of the universe. And then we lose that moral responsibility and accountability.
Yeah, but just because decisions are made deterministically doesn't mean that you're not accountable for them to some extent.
I don't think that...
I think until we understand, I think that, so there's a problem in that we don't yet understand what the factors are that make those determinations. We understand, for example, I remember talking to Philip about desire. This was probably one of the first times I showed up. It was about all decisions are based on the desire. What is the highest desire, and that's the decision you're going to make in a situation. I think that was part of it, and that's where I'm sort of bringing it back, is that any society is trying to impact that desire that people have, either with punishment or with reward, to make sure that a society acts in a specific way. But that doesn't mean that the individual person is not accountable for their decisions.
So I think I disagree with you on this one. I think it actually has more weight to say that there is no free will than it seems. I think we would need to rethink how we see accountability in our society in light of this. I think that's why I thought so weird when you said before the society treats everyone as if free will didn't exist. I think actually the opposite is the case. Especially in our justice system, I think the opposite is the case. I don't think that blaming I guess just I don't see the concept of blame, I guess, as strongly anymore. I don't, or even accountability in that sense. I think that punishment is still necessary, but only in virtue of what it can prevent in terms of the bad things that would happen in the future, right? So punishment would still be necessary so that it deters others from doing the same things, right? That is sort of the rationale of punishment in my mind.
Not according to Luke, though.
Yeah, I don't know what Luke's position on that is, but I think, that's sort of my view, broadly speaking. I mean, there are more details to that, right? But I don't think that it makes sense to talk about punishment in a retributive sense, right?
Yeah.
In that there is something that makes it right to inflict sort of pain, I guess, or uncomfortableness on this person because this person caused uncomfortableness in general. I don't see that logic as being as strong if there is no sort of external motivation. Sorry.
I'm very sorry, Philip, and everybody else. I have to excuse myself. I have one of the kids that's literally sounds like they're trying to hang themselves right now. So unless my wife is carrying them by 1 foot, so it's been an absolute pleasure. And I do apologize.
Thank you.
I will have to jump off.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Steen. Yeah,
thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the show.
Yeah,
Good night.
do. Catch you later, dude.
Good night.
I mean, on that, Dave, do you want to give your answer on this, and then do you think maybe we should cover maybe one more question after this, and then put a pin in it and carry on at a later date?
Yeah, no worries. I'm a compatibilist, but I look at free will in a very different way. In that I see free will as what would have happened if your will had not been obstructed. So if somebody is forcing you to do something that you wouldn't normally do, then that is your free will being obstructed. I know most people wouldn't see that as free will because most people see it in the libertarian sense. But I feel like that's just lots of religious baggage that has come along with the idea, and perhaps conceptualizing free will in a different way, because if it's not possible for us to be the captain of our own ship, then free will is still a useful idea in the fact that we can be bound and gagged and forced to do something that we wouldn't normally do if, like, say, somebody had kidnapped our children and said, go rob this bank, then your will has been interfered with. And that makes sense in a sort of, not retributive way, but in sense of just desserts. Does that make sense?
Isn't that a book you've got as well called Just Desserts?
Yeah. It's a brilliant book based on how we should perceive free will and whether it's even a useful concept within moral ideas.
Yeah, that's fair. So, I mean, I think that's the thing. I almost feel like talking about compatibilism, it's because of the issues with libertarian free will and all the religious free will, basically. You almost could do with a better term rather than free will, rather than calling it compatibilist free will. Because of the issues that it's got there, that there could be a better term for it. I mean, that's why you could actually just say compatibilism rather than compatibilist free will. But it always ties back into this whole free will thing and has everybody, when you're talking about free will, everybody always ties it back into libertarian free will. It's like there's this programming in all of us that thinks about free will in this way. And when you try and say, no, that's not the way I'm talking about free will, everyone goes back to you end up in this cycle. Well, there's no free will.
Yeah.
And I'd agree.
That's why
there's no libertarian free will. So I was just going to say, there's no libertarian free will, and the number of modifications that they have in it, I completely agree with those sorts of sentiments. But it's talking about a different concept.
Yeah, that's why I sometimes like to say that I don't think free will exists, right? Because I think the vast majority of people, when you think of free will, do think of free will in this sort of libertarian sense, and that's why I just, I would say no free will, right? I think so. That's also why I'm fine with people saying that you should say that free will doesn't exist, because okay, I get the argument. I get the argument, as Joe said, to maybe use a different term, maybe. I don't know, but I think in general, if people ask me, I would say probably that I don't think free will exists, but in a more sort of philosophical, I guess, discussion, I would say that I'm probably a compatibilist, because there are some relevant sort of ideas there.
Maybe just call it C will, as in the letter C will. Yeah. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to see if I can get traction on that. I'm just going to call it, I believe in C will.
I'm trying to adjust. Don't like, if I'm doing voices, if I'm doing, expressions and stuff, it's because I'm trying to adjust my headphones again, because they don't work, right? So sometimes I have like this expression of surprise, because I'm like, finally it's working again. Don't. I'm not commenting with my face on what you're saying. That's just what I'm trying to make
I can relate to that with all my technical glitches tonight.
We've had a bit of a bad night of it, haven't we?
Yeah. Although Discord seems to have sorted itself out now.
Now that Steen's gone.
Coincidences? I don't think so.
Well, it started as soon as Joe switched on his camera, and stopped as soon as Steen went. So I reckon you're all out to get me.
That's true.
Okay, fair enough then.
So do you want to do one more question?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight and move on to another day.
So is gender biological, psychological, social, or unreal?
Psychological ties into biological, doesn't it? Or is it using it in a different way to what I'm thinking here?
I think it's probably using it in a different way to what you're thinking. Is gender how we feel? I think is what it means by psychological, or is gender the equivalent of biological sex?
Right, okay.
I think is what it means with biological.
Okay. I think I would answer social, honestly.
I would.
I think I agree with the majority.
I'd say social as well. I think there's an element of psychology to it, but that's probably because of the social. I'd say that it's gender, at least how it's been throughout history, has been expected behaviors of the sex, of a sex. And over time, that's changed and it's become a bit more free. But most people seem to be in line with the expectations of their sex, the behaviors and all those things. So, yeah, it's a much more complicated question than we've really given it time for. But
yeah, we should end on this one. Actually, this is perfect.
On this one,
and this makes total sense. So,
yeah.
I mean, Joe, I don't know what your opinion on this is.
Well, one thing I want
maybe Dave, you should explain what theism is and what atheism is, and then we can answer.
Atheism is the belief that all of religion is mental illness, and theism is the belief that it's not.
No, it's really not. Yeah. No one take him out of context there.
No, I thought,
So the reason there is other here, and I think this is something that's worth explaining, is the fact that in this use, it's going to be using the more commonly used philosophical terminology. So I think we can imagine that theism is the proposition at least one God exists, with a theist accepting this as true, and atheism would be the proposition that no gods exist, and the atheist accepting this true, and the other is all the other types all the other types of non-theist that fit in there.
Maybe we should expand that, right?
Can we see that? Oh, it doesn't. It's not. So agnostic is in there.
Agnostic is,
or undecided. Accepts an alternative view, so you could have your agnostic or apatheist or something else in there. The question is too unclear to answer. I mean, maybe that's where the agnostic might have clicked as well. They could be in either of those ones. There is no fact of the matter. Again, could that be something that an agnostic might take? I'm not sure. And the other is probably the apatheist. I don't give a fuck.
I would think that there is no fact of the matter is something like Huxley, an agnostic, or an empiricist who says, well, there's no empirical data one way or the other, so there's no fact.
Right.
So
okay.
I'm not making a decision. At least that's how I might interpret it.
Yeah, that's cool. That makes sense. So, with at least some understanding of that, and we obviously know what we mean by theism and atheism. This is the either at least one God exists or no God exists. Hands up if you think no gods exist.
Because I'm a strong atheist.
Yeah.
That was much better than the joke about being a hard atheist. I didn't want to do that live on stream.
Yeah, I haven't had my Viagra.
You mentioned it now. It's in everyone's brains. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we've got through about an eighth, if that, of the the PhilPapers survey, and we've been running for almost 3 hours.
Yeah,
I can imagine this is going to take a while for us to get through. But
there is a lot of really interesting questions that come later, so I think it is worth returning to.
I definitely think we should do it. I think it's something that. Well, I don't. I like that question.
Wait. Can you scroll up a second? About the. Wait, what? How is that? I think we have different results somehow. I don't know why, but
you could be looking at the 2009 results.
I don't know. I don't think so, but yeah, maybe I have to check.
But
have you got a filter switched on?
I don't know, because I thought that the in the thing that I had, the other category in rationalism versus empiricism was sort of winning over all of the others, but maybe I was probably wrong. Let's see.
We'll come back. We'll start back on knowledge, empiricism, and rationalism. So next week, we still haven't decided on what we're doing next Tuesday, but next Thursday, we're going to do a Christmas free-for-all AMA, so everyone can jump on the stream with us, and we're just going to have a chat. There's not going to be any real direction to it whatsoever. It's a chance for our audience to come and have their say and introduce themselves to us, and us to get to know a little bit about them, and them to also ask us anything that they so wish to do. Words were bad then. I think you get what I mean, though. But yeah, hopefully you can join us. The reason we're doing it next Thursday rather than the end of the month, because obviously the end of the month is that Christmas week. And on Thursday,
And Joe will be pissed next week.
Yes. So on Thursday, we have our Christmas party, which is a virtual Christmas party. So I'm going to be from within the office anyway. And then, they've basically said, here's some money to get some drink and food. So by the time the stream starts, I will probably already be fucked. No one's safe. Awesome. Right, guys, do you have anything that you'd like to add before we sign off for the night?
I don't think so.
Okay, well,
apart from I'm going to go and beat my laptop up.
Yeah, at some point, Dave, we should try. It might not be as high quality video, but we should try jumping on the Restream studio, and I'll import that into OBS and see how that goes. Or we could even just try doing a stream directly from it, but it limits the quality to 720p unless you pay. So I'd probably prefer to run everything out of OBS. Plus, I've got all the other stuff. But yeah, anyway, we will have a play around with that, and hopefully we can find some way to navigate past all the issues. Maybe Discord isn't the one to use if your internet connection hates Discord that much, because it seems to.
Well, the weird thing is it the video connected thing.
Yeah.
If I click on that, it was showing me as having a 5,000 millisecond ping to the Discord server.
Whoa.
But if I did it through the DOS prompt, it gave me 42.
Weird.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what's going on. I might try uninstalling Discord and reinstalling it and just give it a proper once-over tomorrow.
Good plan. Cool. All right. Well, we'll keep you posted with what's happening next Tuesday, but please join us for the AMA free-for-all. There's a link to the Discord in YouTube, but once I create the event, there'll also be something in the comments as well. And hopefully we will see many of you there. We will also be continuing this PhilPapers survey at various intervals in the future, but we are going to be discussing other topics in between because we want to keep things fresh and interesting for not only you but us as well. You've been watching the Fresh Air Sci-Fi show. I'm Joe.
I'm Dave.
And I'm Philip.
Have yourself a good night all.
Good night, everyone.